Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of She Plays Games, the podcast where we celebrate women in the video games industry. I'm your host, Lauren, and I've been working as a journalist and content creator in the games industry for the last 10 years. On my show, I have a chat with women of many different roles within the games industry, whether it's journalism, games development, or even streaming. My goal is to give visibility to the many women in video games with hopes to inspire a new generation of women in gaming. And I'm thrilled to announce, in recognition of those efforts, I've been nominated for an MCV Women in Games Award in the Games Campaigner of the Year category. It was a complete shock when people started tweeting at me about the nomination, but it's now that it's starting to sink in a little. I'd like to thank everyone who nominated me. This is such a huge deal, and it shows the value of She Plays Games. Last week as well, She Plays Games had a brand refresh. I worked on the initial brand myself, but I felt as though things needed to be spruced up a bit, and I'd like to thank Nerd Pirates for doing a fantastic job and helping me out with the rebrand. Now, for today's episode, my guest is Sally Blake. Sally has been working in the video games industry for a decade and spent 6 years at Ubisoft Reflections. During this time, she worked on huge franchises like Just Dance, Watch Dogs, and The Division, and as a producer, she managed the output of 4 separate teams while liaising with other Ubisoft studios around the world. She left Ubisoft in 2018 to found her own company called Silent Games, and she works there as CEO alongside her role as senior producer at No More Robots. I really hope you enjoy Sally's story, and if you like what I do, please subscribe on your chosen platform. This is episode 31 of She Plays Games. Welcome to the show, Sally. It's great to speak with you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here and to chat about things. It's going to be exciting.
I was really keen to have you on the show, as I think your experience is quite unique in the way that you sort of forged your career and the way you're continuing to do so. At this point, you've been in the industry for almost 10 years, but when you applied for your degree in animation, was landing a job in the industry and the objective, or did you see yourself more as a sort of all-rounder who could have worked in any entertainment medium?
To be honest, my goal has always been games. Like, I've always loved games since I was a little girl, and I played a lot of games with my little brothers as well, and so games has always been the focus for me. The reason I chose animation actually is because, well, it was very hard to speak to developers at that time, but I managed to get in contact with a few. And they said that you could do a games degree, but at the moment they're fairly new. We're not sure if they're any good for you. So maybe you can do like a more established degree in animation, for example. And I was super interested in lots of artsy things and creative things, but I also really enjoyed like computers and technical things as well. So I thought that animation would be like a perfect marriage of the two interests. So that's why I picked my degree in that. And I really did like animation quite a lot, but I did of different things when I was doing my degree, and I was able to also attend the games lectures that they were doing there as well, which was very kind of them to let me go and attend all of my animation lectures and the games ones as well. So yeah, that definitely helped me out in the long run. But yeah, the goal was always games, just because that's what I've always really wanted to do. So
I guess that is the thing. Like, at least if you're in university, you're like actually, developing some skill, even if it's not necessarily what you go into. Like, it's still something that you have. It's in your tool belt.
Yes, definitely. And I learned a lot about, like project management and working as a team and stuff that's really vital for the game industry as well. And that was beneficial instead of just kind of working away on my own. We had a lot of group projects in the final year. And I think most universities still do that, which is really useful because the game industry is basically just one big group project at some point. So that definitely helps out. Yeah, learning those interpersonal skills.
Sometimes a very, very, very big A very, very, very big group project.
Yeah, exactly.
So even though you did study animation, your initial foot in the door was as a functionality tester at Ubisoft Reflections in Newcastle. What made you decide to go for that role?
Well, I mean, Ubisoft is such a well-known company, and I'd played a lot of Ubisoft games like Rayman when I was younger, and so the name was really familiar to me. And I was looking at, basically, I was interested in so many things, and I felt that QA would be a really good position for me to learn more about the game industry and see where I fit in, because when I left university, I really hadn't like fully decided exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work in games. So I felt like QA would be a really good way to kind of see how everybody works. And it really was, actually. It was so useful. Like, I love that job so much. And also the role was for a tester on Just Dance, and I'd played so much Just Dance at that point. It was the interview was crazy, actually. Like, they made me dance to Rihanna's Disturbia in the interview on Just Dance.
My God.
And I was just like, I can't believe this is my interview. But yeah, it was
how do you even
fun.
prepare for that?
I know, I wasn't prepared. Even though I knew it was Just Dance, I thought they would just like ask me questions. I didn't realize they'd actually make me test the game. And I was totally not dressed for it. I wasn't,
my gosh.
like, I was dressed like, because I didn't know what to wear to a game industry interview. And everyone told me, like, keep it kind of casual. So I was kind of like smart casual. And I was just like, wow, I did not expect this. And my dancing was pretty awful as well. But thankfully, they let me do it in the room with the door closed, so nobody could watch me dance. So yeah, but yeah, no, it was a really good opportunity, and I learned a lot at Ubisoft. And yeah, QA was, when I worked in QA, it was a really, really interesting role, and it was. Like, I started as a functionality tester, which is you basically test everything that's already in the game, and you do a very thorough playthrough of what's in the game. But then I moved on to development testing, which means that you're working a bit more closely with the developers, and you're testing their changes before they put it into the game, so you can prevent issues and things that might block other people. So that was a really good way to integrate with the dev team and, gain that experience from them. And yeah, that was really useful for me as well.
It was almost like a really good stepping stones type of thing. Cause yeah, you started out like, all right, this is what's already live. And then going into something that's more new, like you could apply the knowledge that you had of, when you were testing before to this, but it was like just that little bit higher. But I think as well, like from what I've heard, like with QA testing, you really get to know the different types of blocks that go into like creating a game.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to talk to the team. So because the QA at Ubisoft was integrated with the rest of the development team, you were in the same building, in the same room. You would have to speak to the developer if there was something wrong, or if there was a crash, or if there was a bug that was quite complicated to explain. You would often go and speak to the developer about it. And the bugs can come from anywhere, whether it's programming or art or anything. So you end up talking to the entire dev team at some point for whatever reason, So, yeah, I got to know how a game's put together. I got to know all the different disciplines that are involved, and Just Dance is quite a different game to a standard game. So that was a really interesting one to work on in terms of how they actually create the game from start to finish, and the concepting phase as well. So yeah, it was a super great learning experience. And the team on that, I am still friends with so many people on that team. I was a bridesmaid for someone who I worked with in those very early days at Ubisoft. So, we're still like really good friends, and we've all gone on to do loads of different stuff. So we had a really, really good team on that project. So it was a great start to the industry for sure.
I guess you kind of have to be when you guys work so closely together, and like I'm sure that there is probably many moments where you guys enjoyed certain bugs.
Oh yeah, I mean, as well, we were all dancing together, so we had no shame. So you see everyone else's dodgy dancing, and you just get over that very quickly. So yeah.
So was it literally just like a room of dancing people?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
That's so
great. It
was
like the Kinect as well, so there was no cheating it. You couldn't like fling the controller around. It was tracking your body, so we had to do it properly. Yeah. So yeah, it was good.
Quite a good workout, man.
Yeah, honestly. But I ate so much junk though as well. So it kind of
Yeah.
balanced
You
itself
know,
out. I had a terrible diet.
you make up for the the calories lost. You make it up for
Oh
the thing.
yeah,
I know.
absolutely.
I do that like so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've just done a big workout. All right, I'm gonna have
Yes.
cookies. Yum.
It was all that.
Yeah, but that sounds like so much
Yeah,
fun.
it was good.
Um, so like this role was very much in like quality assurance, but it feels quite specific. Was there anything that you could apply from your university degree, or did it lean more on your knowledge as a well-rounded experience as a gamer?
I think it was a bit of both. So, like the team working aspect that I learned at university was really important to QA because you're just in a big team and you need to be able to communicate effectively what the bugs are, and you have to be able to share things with the team. And there is a real sense of camaraderie in QA as well because you're all working towards the same goal and the same thing. I mean, to be honest, in general with games, you are. So, yeah, that was definitely helpful. But I also had to learn lots and lots of new things. There's loads of things at university that I didn't learn about the game industry because my degree was in animation and not games. So,
Mm.
but they were very helpful in telling me all of those things and training me and making sure that I was up to speed with things. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing. Like there's not really a good when there's not really like a preparation for it, like yeah, terminology and stuff. It is really strange.
Mm.
Like I can't imagine how sort of how daunting it must have been like going in initially to just have to relearn things.
Oh yeah, it was both incredibly exciting because it's what I'd always wanted to do and incredibly scary because I was like, wow, now I actually have to do it. And goal was to get into the industry, and now what's the next goal? I'll have to think about that as well
Yeah.
because I've just been aiming towards this for so long. And the terminology as well, yeah, you're right, you had to learn all of that. And then I realized obviously after I left Ubisoft that every company has its own terminology. Ubisoft has its own way of making games and its own terminology that might not necessarily translate to another company, and every company has its own way of doing things that you have to kind of relearn. But I quite like that experience of learning new things and continuing to develop my skills. So I liked that
Mm.
anyway, and I continue to like that. So that helps.
Yeah. They almost like need manuals like thesauruses or something. Like
Yeah,
this means this and this means this. Gaming
that
thesaurus.
would be helpful. Yeah, for sure.
Do you feel like QA also primed you for your role in project management, or was that something that you sought out as you learned more about the development
Oh,
process?
with QA, it helps for any role that you want to get in. I just recommend it so much for people who are wanting to learn. And career as a QA is a career in its own right, and there's progression that you can make within QA if that's where you wanted to go ultimately. And that is something that I considered for a while actually as well. But the opportunity for project management came up because somebody went on maternity leave when I was working on Watch Dogs, and they brought in a producer, but they wanted someone to assist that someone who'd already worked on the team for a while, and I'd worked on the Watch Dogs
Mm.
team for quite a while at that point as a development tester for the gameplay programming team, and that's where they needed a producer. So that was a really good opportunity for me, and it was recommended to me that because I'd done a lot of project management at university as well, like I managed my own project, I managed one of our group projects as well, and I really enjoyed that aspect of seeing what people were up to and seeing them develop and progress their own work. And so I kind of took that, and I thought project management might fit, and I was told by other people that I might be a good fit for project management. So I was like, okay, this is where I might be able to go then. And I took the opportunity that they gave me on Watch Dogs to learn about production and to understand the additional requirements for being a producer, as well as the knowledge that I'd gained from working in QA. And I don't think I could have been an effective producer as quickly without that knowledge in QA. So I
Mm.
really appreciate the fact that I got to learn so much from that role for sure.
Yeah, and it also is nice that they were so supportive of you going into the role as well. Like there wasn't
Mm-hmm.
sort of it doesn't seem like there was any sort of holdback. They were just kind of like, yeah, you want it? Go get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really that, and I mean they recommended that might be a pathway for me because I was very new to the industry. I actually didn't really know much about production at all when I joined Ubisoft or outside of the industry. It was quite hard to get information about roles that weren't your classic game designer or artist or programmer. So there's a lot more information now about production and QA as well. Actually, QA was quite a difficult thing to learn about when you're outside of the industry. So for sure, I think it's gotten better in that way. But yeah, it was very helpful that they recommended me and thought that I'd be a good fit for it, as well as me just seeing production role functions. And QA and production often work really closely together as well. So it's beneficial to be able to see both sides of the coin because they're so closely related, I think. So yeah, that was helpful as well.
And then at bigger publishers like Ubisoft, Capcom, and Square Enix, there's often like half dozen studios working on single projects.
Yeah.
When you were promoted to associate producer to work on The Division, was it sort of difficult to collaborate with other studios around the world? Or was it more that you were just given your ownership of a certain element and kind of left to roll with it and own it?
It was kind of a bit of both, to be honest, and I really liked the collaborative aspect of working with the studios because every studio has its own strengths and weaknesses. It obviously comes with its challenges because of time zones, because of making sure that information gets across to other studios and building relationships with people when you're not able to be in the same room or the same office, which we now know in the pandemic era can be quite tricky.
Yes.
So there was obviously challenges with it, but I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. And there was a good sense of ownership of certain things, because like the way it was separated into different features. So I would own my feature and people at the other studios would own their features, and we'd collaborate to try and make sure that they fit together with the game well. So there was definitely an aspect of trying to, communicate with others, and that's the role of a producer really. I'd have almost daily calls sometimes with the other studios we were collaborating with, depending on where we were in this production schedule. So for sure that was a big learning curve for me because up until that point I'd mainly worked with the teams locally, so working how to effectively communicate to other studios was a learning experience. But yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I got to meet some really amazing people and travel around loads of different places and see different cultures and different ways of working. So yeah, I really like that, and I still like doing that. I still like going to other studios and seeing what other devs are up to. It's definitely a big part of why I like being a producer. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like almost like boot camp for this sort of work from home type of thing. Like it's almost like a stepping stone into remote working.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, it must be so intense to try and keep everything together and keep everything sort of like keep on track of everything.
I think one of the things that's really important for me is just to be able to play the game regularly. And as a producer, you often get quite lost in spreadsheets and numbers and talking to your team, and that's really, really important. And the team stuff is so important, even more important than some of the organizational tasks that you can do. But I'm also, because I'm a gamer myself and I'm really interested in the quality of video games that we produce, I played the game a lot, and I tried to make sure I engaged with it, and made sure I was there for all of the build reviews, and I could see the result of what we were doing, not just, hey, are the tasks done or not? It's very important to see how it feels as a player. And so I think that's a really important thing for a producer, and that's definitely something that came from me being in QA as well. Just that desire to want to play the game the whole time and, just see the progress. And I think that definitely helps if you're able to spend that time just seeing how the product is going overall, like from a player's perspective.
Well, I guess that's the thing when you're QA, like having seen like so much of it in its building, you get like such a good sense, it seems like, of how it should play. Like, I mean, you think about all the bugs that you've come across and all the challenges that you face with it. Like you can tell when something's going right and what something's not going right.
Yeah, definitely. You just get a feel. Sometimes it's not even bugs. It's a gut feeling that it's not right playing right, and being able to quantify that and talk to the team about that. And I mean, when you're doing the build review, the whole team is there and the whole team's involved. So it's not just the producer being like, I don't like this about the game. You're all trying to come up with those conclusions together. And those are some of my favorite moments, is just, especially towards the end of the project when you can really see it coming together, because on large AAA games, there's so many moving parts. It's hard to envisage what the game's going to be like at the end. But when you're really coming towards like the final milestones and you're just all playing the game and it's coming together, as you expected, sometimes not. Like figuring that out and trying to rectify any problems, but also seeing the fruits of all your labor come together is super cool. And there's nothing that really beats like seeing your game in an advert on TV, or like on the game shelf, in its box and all that kind of stuff. It just, yeah, I always love seeing the game being launched and seeing what players think of it. There's nothing better than that, really.
Yeah, that must be just such a crazy, like, proud moment for yourself and for your whole company and team and everything. Like, that just must be so incredible.
Just, you get lots of nice comments from players as well sometimes, like about how the game has distracted them from a situation that they've been struggling with, or they've had loads of fun playing Just Dance at Christmas with their family, or The Division has been really a cool game that they've played with their friends. And just like the lovely comments that you get from players about how the game has, had a positive effect on their life is just such a nice thing. And I just really like that. And the Division players were super nice as well. Like they sent me a Christmas present, which was so nice. Like some of the Division players like got together and sent me one, and I was like, that's just, they've obviously thought about us as developers as well. And just, I really like it when there's good relationships between players and developers. And I like that when there's like honesty and transparency, and you're giving updates about the progress of the game to players, and they're respectfully like giving you feedback, or there's that loop and that communication between the devs and the players. I'd love to see more of that. And I think now that like developers have Twitter and social media, there's obviously downsides to that. Some people can be really mean, but there's lots of upsides as well that I really enjoy when I talk to players online. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, the community aspect of video games, like it can be so good. It can be just so positive and uplifting. And I don't really see anything like that. And like there's obviously some things in other mediums, but there's so many pockets of dedicated fans of certain games that it's just incredible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're just so passionate about the game, and they feel like when they play it, interactive, so they feel like they're taking part in something. And yeah, it's just cool to see when they're really enjoying it. And also their feedback is so valuable as well. They think about things that you might not have always seen because you look so closely at the game. It's very hard to evaluate with a fresh perspective, so they're able to give that to you. And I used to run a playtesting scheme at one of the companies that I worked at, and seeing players play it for the first time is just such an eye-opening thing. So yeah, their help just helps shape the game and make it better overall. So
they probably just do things that you just don't expect. You're just like, wait, hold on. Why did you do that?
There's so many surprising things that you're just like, oh, of course they would do that, but I know what to do, so I didn't even think of it. Yeah, I've seen a few things like that.
And then after working on The Division for almost 3 years and looking after 4 teams, what made you decide to leave and join Hammerhead for a role that was specialized in VR?
Yeah, so I'd worked at Ubisoft I think it was about 6 years at that point, and I'd worked on The Division, and I was basically about to move on to The Division 2, and I did do some work on The Division 2, but by that point I'd done like a lot of work on The Division, and I felt like I needed something new and a new challenge. And I was also planning to set up my studio at the time a bit later on. It was just in the very, very early stages of setting up my own studio at that point as well. It was just like an idea in my mind. And certainly at Ubisoft, I was incredibly busy, and it was very full on there. And I felt like working at a smaller studio would be really interesting, because I feel like I did actually get a broad range of experience that was, at a higher level in the company. So I got to deal with budgets and things that I might not necessarily have touched at Ubisoft. And also VR and AR, it was brand new technology. So that was interesting to me, just seeing what innovations technology and hardware can bring to gaming as well. So that's what really appealed about Hammerhead. And I knew some people there as well, so that always helps if you're planning to move to a new company and people can vouch that it's a nice place to work. And I learned so much
Yeah.
while I was at Hammerhead. And just working with VR and AR was so interesting. I hadn't really played much VR prior to that, so just learning how the game design and the gameplay mechanics have to change to suit VR and AR. Yeah, it was super, super interesting for that reason, and that's why I chose to go to Hammerhead rather than another traditional game studio at the time. So yeah.
Do you feel like the VR aspect at Hammerhead really made you even a more well-rounded employee to just be able to see in both VR and experiences both VR and not VR?
Yeah, I think it did, and that's the reason I wanted to be there. It's because I wanted a new challenge and I wanted to do something that was completely not what I'd done before. And not only that, just the fact that it was a smaller studio. They're doing incredibly well now. Calling them small is not quite accurate. They're doing super, super well, and they're doing amazing, mind-blowing things at the moment. But yeah, just working at a different level, able to control and work with people on an entire project, that was really cool. Because on Ubisoft I was working on features, but at Hammerhead I was there like running entire projects, so that was really cool to kind of see everything at a high level rather than a small feature level. And that was a great learning experience for me, and just seeing how the very, very early conceptual phases of projects made was really useful for me at Hammerhead as well. And the team there was so great. Like, I love them so much. I'm still friends with lots of people from Hammerhead, and they're a really, really great team and so many talented people there. So yeah, it was a really good learning experience for me to be at Hammerhead, and I got lots of really great opportunities there.
It almost seems like with what you're saying about like smaller studios and bigger studios, it's like this thing where you get to work on all these like you have the chance to work on really awesome games with like a lot of prestige with Ubisoft and companies like that. But like what I keep gathering is that it's almost like it's a restriction. Like it's just so much more restrictive. Whereas like working for smaller studios, you just have so much freedom because everybody is kind of figuring things out for themselves and you're all just kind of like in it together. Like there's not that like as much of the pressure with like outside forces being like, this has to be this way because it's corporate. Whereas like it really seems like working in smaller studios is like it's such an eye-opening and like sort of growth focused experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I got a lot more creatively involved on projects at Hammerhead as well. So working really closely with the designer, and I felt like we were all able to contribute creatively, whereas at Ubisoft I was doing a lot of very production heavy technical things, which I really did enjoy as well. And don't get me wrong, I really, really liked that side of it, but just being involved creatively, because I've always been interested in games and I consider myself to be quite creative, and I like art and I like, designing things, and I, want to be involved in that aspect of it, while obviously letting the team ultimately make the decisions about the creative side. They were very open to everybody having a contribution to that part of the game. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. And yeah, there's some stuff that I made at Hammerhead that I'm really proud of, and we made some really good progress as a team on. So yeah, that aspect, you're right, in terms of just having a bit more freedom in small studios to make your own decisions is definitely a thing that I really enjoyed. So.
And going back, you said about starting up your own studio, Silent Games, which is amazing. Was it difficult to manage working on your own game as well as the studios that you were hired by? Or do you feel as though they actually like would complement each other and helped you be more efficient?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't run the studio on my own. We have a co-founder, Joseph, and he works at the studio full time. So he's able to keep things running when I'm learning and developing myself and putting myself in a position where I can be an effective CEO and make sure that I have all that knowledge of how to build a team, how to do budgeting, how to community, with stakeholders, and all the stuff that's really important for running a company. And that knowledge that I gained from Hammerhead was really valuable to move towards that step. And yeah, just obviously it's challenging to manage many different things at the same time. Like I volunteer for so many things, and then I get quite overwhelmed with the amount that I end up saying yes to because I just can't say no to anything.
Yeah.
So certainly that's something that I'm trying to manage better as I move forward. But yeah, all of my experiences that I've in pretty much every job that I've had in the industry have culminated in, moving towards being an effective CEO for my company. So that was always really useful experience, and yeah, for sure it was what I wanted to do ultimately. So yeah.
I think that's just the thing though, like when you have a passion for learning and a passion for like so many different aspects of just life, you want to do everything, and you want to do everything now, and not like in the future. You want to do everything now. So yeah, it's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because there's one thing where you're just kind of like, I want to do all this stuff, but I don't want to be overwhelmed. But then now I'm overwhelmed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you sort of manage it? How do you, like, when do you stop and say like, okay, I'm at my limit. Mm-hmm. I need to sort of step back.
Well, I've been having some leadership training recently by this lady called Emma Cowling, and she's amazing. She's just so insightful and frames things in ways that I would never have thought of them. And she has definitely helped me with this kind of thing in terms of just being able to manage my own schedule well, and just being able to pick out the things that are important to me. And she talks a lot about, figuring out what your mission is and what your true goal in life is, and making sure the things that you do are furthering that goal, but you also have time to look after yourself and to self-care and to make sure that you're well enough to, move forward to that mission, but also just have a fulfilling life in general. And that's been a really helpful thing to talk about and to learn about. And yeah, it's very much making sure that you can always delay things, which is something that I didn't used to do. I'd always be just like, yes, and I'll do it right now. And then I'd have 10 things to do in that day. Whereas you can obviously say, yes, but my schedule's more free here, or not right now, but I'd love to come back to this. I found it very difficult to just be like, delay things or put things off until later, or maybe just say no entirely. And that's definitely a skill that has to be learned, and I've definitely learned it in the last few years to make sure that I'm able to manage everything that I want to be able to do. And I still get it wrong sometimes, of course, everybody does.
Yeah.
I've found that really effective, and the kind of help I've been getting there has been really effective as well. So yeah,
I think you do sometimes just need that other voice, that other person, that other like commentator to sort of like help you along.
Yes, for sure. Like, you can't see when you're so busy and your task list is so long, it's very hard to get an overall picture of where you are with things and to find what really matters when you're just lost in the chaos of life in general and just getting everything done and you're just on a treadmill constantly running. It's nice to just take stock sometimes and to just have someone to say that to you. I've also got another mentor as well, because I didn't really have a mentor until fairly recently. She's called Kayla, and she's helped me with that stuff. So through the IGDA program, they gave me a mentor who's someone like quite senior and able to kind of understand where you've come from and what your role is and help you progress. And she's been really helpful in just letting me take stock of so far, so I don't feel like I have to be constantly on the treadmill. And just conversations with her, even though we've only had a couple so far, have been really nice. So having a mentor is just such a great thing. And I do mentor a lot of people myself, but I just wasn't able to kind of find someone who had the time. So now that I have that, it's just, it's been such a life-changing thing, and it's been really helpful. So I'd recommend that to anybody that is needing that bit of support, to seek one out. It really helps.
That's such a thing though, isn't it? It's like there's so many people who you're mentoring, but like you wanted the mentor for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And it's quite hard to find when the more senior you get, the more difficult it is to find, particularly women at a senior level as well. Unfortunately, in the game industry, there is quite a lack. So it's definitely improving, and I'm seeing people move up the ranks now from kind of my generation. I say 10 years, and it feels like it was yesterday when I just started. So it's really weird that it's been almost 10 years. But I can see that improving and changing. So hopefully there will be more mentors for people over time that understand those experiences. So, because it makes such a huge difference, I think.
I mean, it's weird to think that only 10 years ago it was 2010. Like, I'm still coming to terms with that. Like, the fact that, like, 2010 was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, wait, hold on. Why?
It's so
How?
weird, like, how time just goes. Like, university, it's weird because it seems like a bajillion years ago, but also like yesterday, depending on what day it is, because I remember it very clearly. But I realize how long ago it was. It's such a weird thing, how time flows like that.
I know. I know. It's so crazy. But either way, I mean, with Silent Games, your first game is actually A Life of Consequences, which is a fantasy-based action RPG and quite different from the projects you worked on at Ubisoft. So what inspired you to make a game like that?
Well, it's like a medieval fantasy style, which I've always really enjoyed those games. One of the first games I ever played was Zelda, and that was the game that just really inspired me to work in the industry, and I loved it so much. So there's definitely inspiration there. And it's also multiplayer, and the reason we chose to make a multiplayer game is obviously because we had a ton of experience making multiplayer games at Ubisoft, but also because we had like quite a lot of different philosophies that we wanted to bring forward with making multiplayer games. Obviously these days with multiplayer, there's a lot of very throwaway interactions with players. So if you're playing a game that has matchmaking, you might talk to somebody for a few minutes before you're right into the action with them. And obviously that doesn't always foster the best kind of relationships. And I know that there's a lot of conversations about toxicity in online gaming and things like that. And so with Silent Games, our long-term goal is really to be able to change those interactions and to foster long-term bonds between players. And our first game, A Life of Consequences, is the vehicle in which to do that and to learn in what ways players can come together and how to make that happen. So yeah, we're really, really excited about it. And we've been on the game for a while, and we have shown people like the concept art and the trailers and things, and we've had such a positive response to the game, and it's really, really exciting to have seen it almost come to fruition in terms of we've got a demo now and it's playable, and the team have worked really hard on it. We managed to get some really good people who have just really put their soul into the game, and they've really helped us in the very early stages of the journey, which can be the most challenging at some, to raise the funds to be able to work on the game and all sorts of things. So I really appreciate all the people that have rallied around us to help us in loads of different ways. It's been super cool to see that all come together. So yeah, I'm excited, as you can probably tell.
Oh, it's great. And like, I mean, that does seem to be like the sort of philosophy of your of the development studio in general, is this whole need for better multiplayer experiences. And I think it's true. Like, I mean, I kind of like, I struggle a lot with making like sort of meaningful connections with people through games. Yeah. Like, I'm a fan of Final Fantasy, but like that, having friends who are also into Final Fantasy is like, it's a lot easier to do that for me than it is to play a game, have a really good game and connection with somebody in a game, like in League of Legends or something, and then be able to like connect with them outside of it. Like, on League of Legends, they always have that, they used to have a thing where like after the match, you would get like some kind of bonus or something if somebody liked you, like if somebody like got on with you, but like that would be where it would end. And like, it was really reliant on you knowing people in order for you to play with other people. And I always found that aspect like so impersonal, because like, how are we supposed to connect with other gamers and be friends with other gamers who are playing the same games at the same times as we are if it's that the opportunities aren't
Yeah,
there.
definitely. And I think there's certainly ways that we can foster that from a game design perspective, which we're not currently doing.
Mm,
Obviously, there's issues with like anonymous there, can't say it. When you're anonymous online, there's that kind of
yeah.
aspect of it as well that makes people feel like they can say anything and that their actions don't matter. But it's also the throwaway nature of the interaction as well, and the fact that your reputation in the game doesn't really matter. Whereas in previous communities,
Mm,
like the early World of Warcraft community, there was certainly when there was guilds and things that really were put in the game to make sure that you foster those long-term bonds. Those kind of things are the
mm.
things that we want to bring back to life on top of new systems that we've thought of that are quite new specifically for the A Life of Consequence. So I think, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, and I hope that it achieves the goal that we're trying to get. We will see.
Oh, well, I hope so
Mhm.
too. And I mean, aside from all that, you also um, you also founded Women Making Games at Northeast, and alongside a few other women in the games industry, and you've contributed to Girls Make Games. Why did you feel as though this was important?
Well, I mean, I've been interested in this for a long time. Obviously, everybody knows that there's just a lack of women in the game industry, and there's so many different reasons for that. And I know that having a mentor and having a support network and just having someone to ask questions to, especially in the early days, can make such a difference to people's careers. And so the aim for Women Making Games was to create that community. And certainly as well, because I'm based in Newcastle, I'm based in the north of England, there is a cluster of companies up here, but there wasn't really that level of support like there is in London or the
Mm,
south that already kind of exists, and there's networks that operate there. So I really wanted to recreate some of what they had there and bring it to the north and make sure that people up here have a community for them. And it started off really, it was just a few women going to lunch. Basically, we went out for dinner, we went out for lunch, and then I made a Facebook group just so we could organize it better. And yeah, it just kind of took off from there, and it grew, and there was obviously an interest for it. So that's when I started to get like other people involved in terms of being admins for it. So I've got a really, really good supportive admin team who help with a lot of cool ideas and organization, and that has meant that the organization has really found its grounding and its foundations. And yeah, it's just been a good couple of years. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's been a little hard to organise the events that we normally would, but we've done a couple of
yeah.
just chats for people to catch up. We did like a Women Making Games quiz as well, which was quite fun. We had a good time with that. So just making sure we're checking in with people, and we have like a jobs board so we can share when there's opportunities and people come to advice. We've got people who've just joined the industry. We've got women who are very, very senior in there as well. So there's a really good mix of people to help each other. And so, yeah, that
Mm,
kind of thing, I've had people say it's been helpful for them, and that just warms my heart. I love that stuff when people are just
yeah.
like, oh, I've found the network to be really useful for my career progression, or I found a job through the network. That was the whole kind of idea when it started to really come into its own. So yeah, that's been super cool to see how that's grown. And the members are all great. They keep it going. They will talk to each other. They will share ideas and share articles and keep the Discord alive, which is super cool of them to all be contributing. So yeah, that's really cool.
I think there is a thing though, like there is such a desire for communities like this,
Mm-hmm.
and like I know a lot of women have been sort of having talks recently about like holding the door open for other girls to come
Yes.
into the
Mm-hmm.
industry, other women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is just so amazing, all these initiatives that are popping up to
Mm-hmm.
help and just give advice to people and connect all of us together. Because like, yeah, that's the only way that we're gonna make the industry any better is through things like Women Making Games, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and just just a lot of help.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's tons of other organisations that are doing amazing stuff because obviously, you know, women is not the only type of diversity there is. There's Pock in Play, they do an amazing stuff. Litany as well is a local organisation. They do stuff for LGBTQ, and there's lots of like different organisations popping up, and they're all really working hard. And a lot of it they do in their own time, alongside their full-time jobs, alongside tons of other advocacy work, all for free. You know, giving their time. And yeah, I just admire those organisations so much that are doing that and doing it really well. And I really look up to them in terms of being inspiration for WOMG as well. So yeah, it's cool to see other people doing their thing, especially in the north as well. I just love to see that because there's a lot of, there is quite a lot of stuff down south and a lot of people doing amazing stuff there. So it's nice to see these organisations popping up and running well in the north as well, because that's close to my heart since I'm from the north. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is hard. It's hard when everything is in a location that you can't actually always get to.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there are so many creeping up in like different parts of like Canada. Canada has like a ton in like random sort of areas, you know, where games development is happening. And I think that's just going to keep happening more and more now that organizations, especially now that so many people are working remotely, they're going to be more localized, and that's great.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of that and that continue to grow for sure. So yeah, it makes a big difference when it's accessible for people and they can attend an event that's not super far for them. It's not going to cost a bajillion pounds on the train, or they don't need loads of accommodation overnight and stuff. It does make a huge difference for people. So yeah, it's cool to see those popping up in different areas where there are game hubs, and even when there aren't, sometimes where there's just like a university that's doing a games course and there's people starting things there. I think it's just cool to see that develop. So yeah.
And then I mean, you're working now at No More Robots, and you have been for the last 10 months.
Yeah.
Like, how has that been going?
It's been going super well. I love the team so much. I say that about all the teams, but for some reason I've just got incredibly lucky with the teams that I've worked with. And I've learned a great deal from No More Robots because they're a publisher, so it's a totally different side of game development. And I work with loads of different dev teams on loads of different games as well. So I get to see how they make their games, and they're small teams, fairly small teams. So they all have their different ways of doing stuff. The games are all very unique as well and completely different from each other. So seeing those develop has been really cool. Learning how the publishing side of the business works has been so interesting because it's just stuff that I hadn't really touched and hadn't really been involved in. I just had no reason to kind of know about that stuff. So that is a whole new world to me, the publishing side of things. And because I'm trying to get a game published or invested in, that's been so beneficial to learn all of those things. So yeah, it's been so useful, and I've done tons of game launches recently. So that's always fulfilling, is just seeing the game launched and seeing people's reaction to it. And yeah, so that opportunity has been there over the past 10 months. It's been a ride for the last 10 months. We've done so many launches, and I'm the only producer at No More Robots, so I'm managing a lot of the launches myself, obviously with the support of the team as well. But that's just been cool to see that all come together, and we're doing the last few launches now, so we'll be wrapping up at the end of the year. And yeah, I just feel like we've achieved so much in a short space of time. And No More Robots as a company is super impressive as well. It's a fairly new company, but what they've achieved in the short time that they've been operating is pretty crazy, to be honest. They've published some really great games, and they've made, players really happy with the games that they've created, and they've done way better than I think anyone really expected. Even the founder of the company, Mike, I think it's grown way quicker than he even thought it would. So yeah, I just admire all that's happened with that. Yeah, it's really cool.
I mean, Yes, Your Grace was just like a smash hit alone, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the team did an amazing job with that. It looks beautiful. The narrative is super interesting. But I know that Mike did a really great job in terms of the promotional cycle of it and making sure it got noticed. And Pip, who does all the marketing, did a really great job with the Discord. And there's so much work that goes into making sure players notice the game and they feel connected to the community as well, that the team put into that. And that was a part of its success as well. So Yeah, for sure. It's just a great game, and that helps. all of the No More Robots games,
Yeah, it
I've
always
ended up
works.
playing all of them and spending so many hours on No More Robots games because they're all like my type of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's ended up taking a lot of my time just playing the
Oh,
game. But yeah.
it's so great to be a part of a company that you like, that you are also just such a fan of as well, I
Mm.
think. I think that really like inspires you, it must
Yeah,
do.
it does. Yeah, like the opportunity to learn and the opportunity to work on games that I like and are just really interesting and sometimes quite wacky. A lot of the No More Robots games are a bit wacky, which is cool. They're not afraid to take a chance on something that might be a bit niche, but then turns out to be a hit, you know? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's been really cool to see how that whole thing operates behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, I really look forward to seeing all that you do in the future. This is, yeah, I don't have any more questions. I'm just so thankful that you were coming on the show, and it's been really great to talk to
Yeah, it's been
you.
really lovely to be on and just chat about things and to hear your perspective on things as well, especially around multiplayer games. I'm always so curious about what people think about that philosophy and strategy, and it always
Mm.
makes me happy when it resonates with people. So yeah, thanks very much for having me on.
That's it for this episode of She Plays Games. Thank you so much, Sally, for coming on the show, and be sure to follow Sally on Twitter at Vialixia. Also, if you want more episodes of She Plays Games, please be sure to subscribe and follow me on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube by searching She Plays Games, and on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at She Plays Podcast. If you want to be on the show or want to nominate someone to come on the show, you can email me at sheplayspodcast@gmail.com. See you all next time on She Plays Games.